You ever walk into a room and just know, deep down in your gut, that you don't belong? Yeah, that was me, for 3 straight years. Every time I stepped onto the marble floors of the Hawthorne Chess Club, those crystal chandeliers twinkling overhead, the air humming with the low drone of voices soaked in expensive wine and entitlement. My name's Dolly, and for as long as anyone in that room could remember, I was just the woman in the plain blouse. Never the competitor, always the one quietly polishing the ornate boards, scrubbing at invisible spots while the real players held court. You know what I mean? That's how it goes in places built on status instead of substance. Chess here wasn't a game. It was a peacock's tail, and every conversation was just another feathered. But don't get me wrong, I loved chess. Loved it with my whole heart. Ever since those evenings hunched over a chipped plastic set in my grandma's little apartment. She'd always tell me, the board is the great equalizer, baby. Doesn't care about your bank account, just your brain. But at Hawthorne, it felt like all that beauty, the purity of the game, got replaced by snobbery. Members would flash their ratings like they were flashing diamonds. Once, I heard a guy sneer, "Careful with that board. It's worth more than your monthly salary." I just nodded, biting my tongue. But trust me, I remembered every word. That's the thing with clubs like this. They turn chess into a spectacle, a social contest. I heard folks gossip about grandmasters, drop names, boast about private lessons that probably cost more than I made in a month. And God forbid you didn't fit the mold. One time, a lady whispered, "The help shouldn't touch the pieces. They might not understand how delicate they are." I tell you, it took everything I had not to laugh right in her face. Because while they were busy measuring status, I was studying the game, devouring strategy books, memorizing Grandmaster lines, grinding away in online blitz, not for trophies or glory, but for the love of that silent battle between two minds. That night, though, something in the air just felt different. Maybe it was the way the club buzzed with anticipation for the charity exhibition, another excuse for the rich to pat themselves on the back while pretending their donations made them saints. I was arranging the chairs, laying out gleaming sets, when I saw Marcus Cromwell swagger in. Yeah, that Marcus Cromwell, former child prodigy, real-life grandmaster, and, to put it politely, the club's most prized peacock. He'd only been in town a couple years, but you'd think he invented chess the way everyone fawned over him. Marcus always made my skin crawl. He'd once announced, right in the middle of a lecture, "Some people just aren't born with the mental capacity for chess." That's not an insult. It's just nature. Smug, icy, and always so sure the world existed to applaud him. I kept my head down, kept cleaning, but inside I was boiling. The exhibition rolled on, champagne glasses clinking, laughter echoing off the high ceilings. Then, Marcus stood and raised his voice, slicing right through the noise. "Ladies and gentlemen, a lesson in chess mastery. Let's have some fun." That's when the crowd started to circle, hungry for the usual spectacle. Marcus liked to pick victims for educational beatdowns, and tonight, I saw that gleam in his eye, the one that said he was ready to humiliate someone just for sport. That he scanned the room, searching for prey, and then, of course, his gaze landed right on me. "You there, the cleaning lady. What's your name?" he called, loud enough for every head to turn. I kept my voice calm. "Dolly, sir." He grinned, like a wolf about to pounce. "Tell me, Dolly, do you know how to play chess?" You could hear the snickers. I just nodded and answered, "I know the rules, sir." That was all he needed. Wonderful. Let's give Dolly a chance to play against a real grandmaster. He looked at the crowd like he'd just produced a rabbit from his hat. They loved it. The joke, the setup, the promise of easy humiliation. A few people actually bet how many moves it would take for Marcus to crush me. I tried to demur, but he cut me off, insisting it'd be good for everyone. The crowd herded me to the demonstration table, laughter rippling through the air. My hands were steady, my heart was pounding, but not from fear. No, it was that old fire, the one my grandma lit in me years ago, burning hot in my chest. Marcus played it up, explaining to everyone how opening theory worked, how the true masters understood things mere enthusiasts never could. Ladies first, he said, mock chivalrous, waving his hand. I moved my king's pawn forward. Classic e4, nothing flashy. He responded, then launched into a mini lecture about predictable openings. I played my knight to f3, just as calm. He moved his knight, kept talking, kept explaining to the audience how control of the center separated amateurs from experts that I let him talk. I let him show off. Meanwhile, I played the Ruy Lopez, 3 bishop to b5, just as my grandma taught me. He barely noticed. Oh my, the Ruy Lopez, he chuckled. How quaint. But as the game unfolded, his lectures started to slow, his little quips getting less confident. My moves were unassuming, on the surface. But every piece, every pawn, was placed for a reason. I could feel him start to notice. By the 15th move, Marcus's tone had shifted. He was no longer entertaining the crowd. He was studying the board. Interesting, he murmured, more to himself than to anyone else. Let me back up a sec. There's a moment in every real chess match where you stop seeing your opponent as a stereotype and start seeing them as a threat. For Marcus, that moment came when I set a trap 3 moves in advance, a little fork if he got greedy. He almost fell for it. He tried to mask his nerves with bluster, but his eyes gave him away. The room started to go quiet. The laughter faded, the phone stopped recording. People realized this wasn't the massacre they'd expected. It was a real game. I heard Dr. Patterson, one of the only players in the club I actually respected, whisper, "She's playing real chess." Marcus started sweating. Every move I made closed in on him. No wasted motion. Every pawn push opening up new threats. It wasn't luck, it wasn't guessing. It was pure chess, the kind you can only play when you love the game more than you love yourself. Then, the board exploded. I lifted my queen, played QH2+, and just like that, Marcus was on the ropes. There was no escape. Every defense led to a deeper trap. He flailed, but the combinations were airtight. When I finished the sequence, his king was boxed in, his queen lost. He looked at me, completely stunned, then whispered, "I resign." The room went dead silent. You should have seen their faces. The mighty Marcus Cromwell, taken down by the help. I offered my hand and simply said, "Good game." He took it, his eyes wide, his whole world shaken. I could see him replaying every mistake, every arrogant word he'd ever spoken about who belonged at the board. Dr. Patterson was the first to break the silence. That was extraordinary chess. Where did you learn to play like that? I told them the truth. My grandmother taught me. She loved the game. Marcus was still reeling, struggling to process what had just happened. That combination was master level, he said. I looked around at the club, at all the people who'd spent years looking through me instead of at me, and said, chess isn't about money or status or clubs. It's about the beauty of the game, about respect, about finding answers no one else can see. Marcus nodded, quietly, humbled for maybe the first time in his life. I always thought chess was about proving you're better than everyone else, he admitted. But you weren't trying to embarrass me. You just played beautifully. I smiled, because that's all I'd ever wanted. Chess teaches us humility, if we let it. Every game, every opponent, has something to teach us. The crowd stayed stunned, the shock slowly turning to respect, at least from some of them. Maybe not all, but some. Maybe you could teach me something, Marcus said softly. About real chess. I said, anytime. We're never too old to learn. So, tell me, what does this story make you think about judging others? Ever underestimate someone who turned out to be a master in disguise? Drop your thoughts below. Let's hear your stories. And if this made you see things differently, maybe hit subscribe, because sometimes the quietest voices hold the loudest lessons.